Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Shafiqa binti Saiful Bahri. Today I will present to you the introduction of foreign direct investment. FDI is a type of investment which is the donor commits funds from abroad to a project that takes place in another country. In Malaysia, the economy of Malaysia has been rising consistently daily, and the foreign direct investment is one of the key drivers of this strong growth. In addition, the Malaysian government passed the Investment Incentive Act in 1968. As a result, the country now has a free trade area. According to the Statistics Department of Malaysia, from 2009 until 2019, the country's foreign direct investment rose to 991.6 billion ringgit Malaysia from 270 billion ringgit. In 2019, Japan, Hong Kong and the Netherlands were the major contributors to FDI flows.
Hi, okay, background of study. Firstly, the factors that affect Malaysia's potential to attract foreign direct investment (FDI) is infrastructure, exchange rate, market size, and monetary policy are the most significant consideration in attracting FDI. Next is higher FDI may be attracted to the markets of mostly larger host countries due to increased potential demand and lower scale economies costs. And lastly, in previous study, Farazida 2013 discovered that infrastructure and market size are predictors of foreign direct investment and that they are significantly and positively related but not exchange rate. Thank you. Okay, problem statement. Firstly, developing countries have become increasingly reliant on FDI to promote economic efficiency. Next, foreign direct investment was a major driver of the Malaysian economy's rapid expansion until 1980. Lastly, Malaysian economies are concerned about the continued decline in FDI as well as the country's inability to support fair FDI inflows.
Scope of study. The researchers focus on relationship between FDI and infrastructure, exchange rates, market size, GDP, and monetary policy in Malaysia. Government development spending on transportation, communication, and public services is used to calculate the infrastructure. The US exchange rate is used as the reference, and market size is calculated in terms of GDP per capita. This study spans a period of 9 years, beginning in 2010 until 2019. All variables data were gathered from the World Bank, Econ, Department of Statistics Malaysia, DOSM.
Research objective divide into two groups where major and specific research objective. For major research objective is to determine the factors that influence FDI in Malaysia. For specific research objective to determine a connection between infrastructure, exchange rate, market size and monetary policy with FDI in Malaysia.
Significance of study. Okay, previous researcher Fazida 2013 and Nasir 2016 already conducted the study of the special effect of determinants like exchange rate, market size, infrastructure, and the trade on the emerging economy of Malaysia with regard to foreign direct investment. Therefore, our research seeks to explain the market size, infrastructure, exchange rate, and monetary policy with a foreign direct investment between 2010 until 2019. Malaysia is one of the countries impacted by the coronavirus pandemic that leads to a major decrease in foreign direct investment, which is last year, FDI in Malaysia dropped by 68% at the UN Conference on Trade and Development. This is the biggest decline in Southeast Asia. According to Reuters Malaysia, that it had received future investment of ringgit 16.05 million and export purchase around RM 986.2 million from South Korea and Japan. So this report will provide the government with some facts to ensure both capital and economic development. The result of this study may influence the analysis or not. With this report, investors will decide whether to invest in our country or not, and investors are very important to our country as they can affect the economic stability and growth.
Now, I'll proceed with the chapter 2, which is a literature review. This chapter will be the most focused on the review previous research on the research model that will be used in our study. The hypothesis will be illustrated and the theory will be broadened to include the present theoretical context in which the analysis is being conducted, as well as a review of early scientific discovery to the substitute the study report. From the chronology, FDI is defined as a long-term investment made directly by a foreign investor in a domestic business unit. FDI serves as a barometer of international investor confidence in their economic activity in Indonesia, which can help promote subsequent capital inflows.
Malaysia economy is an emerging, partially open and economy-oriented industrial area. Each state in Malaysia contributes significantly to the country's economic growth. Malaysia economy have a variety industry including construction, fisheries and tourism. Malaysia also pursuing goal of establishing a deep knowledge in technology, science and development. In 2007, Malaysia top export were electrical device, petroleum and wood product. According to Property for the year 2010, Malaysia top import were machinery, truck, iron and steel product. GDP ratio averaging in Malaysia is one open economy in the world to trade over 130% in 2010. This method involves employment creation and income growth until 40% job in Malaysia connected with export activity.
For the relationship between infrastructure and foreign direct investment, Malaysia is making progress in improving infrastructure and developing telecommunication, both of which are essential components in attracting more foreign investors. According to Weller and Moody, infrastructure efficiency is a significant variable for developing countries seeking to attract FDI. Instead, it implies that improved infrastructure is a key factor in attracting foreign direct investment to developing countries. According to Young and Ng, argue that infrastructure has a positive impact on FDI inflow in Malaysia in the long run. But in the short run, however, all of the listed leg of variables determine FDI flows. According to Bakar Ahmad and Harun, Malaysia is one of the Southeast Asian most competitive countries for attracting foreign direct investment.
The relationship between market size and foreign direct investment. According to the market size theorem, the size of the host country market affects the internal FDI because foreign investors are equal both strategically and economically. They can only invest in a global market if their anticipated revenue returns exceeds their various operating costs. However, according to Wei and Liu, given the size of the economy by market size, foreign investors base their assessment on the size of hosting economy, which characterize the scale of economy and hence the return of investment. This hypothesis is mainly supposed to be a causal from GDP to internal FD. On the other hand, it can be seen that inward FDI precedes the economic growth. This argument opposed by Bosk and Kolasa, which they said it focused on the premise that FDI is a major medium for technology transmission and the development of the dual employment opportunities with the host economy. In addition, is complementing the domestic private investment. Many surveys were carried out to the study of the impact of the market size on the global economy. For example, is Ang 2008, Newbers 2006 and Hassan 2007 that they conclude that in Malaysia, FDI continues to increase as the market size of country increases. The impact of FDI on the Malaysian economy was investigated by Charis Amino and Rosny in 2015 using a variety of FDI determinants. They conclude that the economy of Malaysia should take necessary measures to increase the business growth and scale.
Okay, about exchange rate. One of the listed exchange rate points is exchange rates movement can affect FDI by altering the cost of acquiring an asset in the native legal currency. Exchange rate fluctuations have a negative effect on FDI in Malaysia because they affect the cost of purchasing assets in the country. Okay, about monetary policy, one of the listed monetary policy points is the objective of this project is to assist policymakers in making decisions by setting a detailed reference on how physical and monetary policy affects foreign direct investment.
Research design and procedural purpose of study. The research is conducted using a case study. The study objective is to establish a relationship between FDI inflow and Malaysian economic development. To accomplish this, the study established FDI inflow variable. Type of investigation for this analysis is causal. The effect of one or more variables on one or more outcome variables is investigated using causal relationship. This type of study also determined a connection between infrastructure, exchange rate, market size, monetary policy, and FDI in Malaysia. Researcher interference classified into three types of interference: low, moderate, excessive. In terms of this analysis, it is frequently classified as involving minimum intervention. Minimum interference as there will no disruption to the work usual operation.
Okay, about study setting. This research is conducted in a natural setting. The studies unit of analysis is the country. This study use longitudinal study approaches assist in determining the direction and magnitude of causal links by describing changing patterns.
For our research, they have 4 hypotheses, but I only mentioned at this side only 3, and I will explain more the lastly hypothesis. This hypothesis about a monetary policy and foreign direct investment. The HO is there is no significant relationship between monetary policy and foreign direct investment. And for the H1, there is a significant relationship between the monetary policy and foreign direct investment.
Estimation of multivariate regression coefficients. So, the application of OLS to a multi-independent variable equation is very close to the application of OLS to a single independent variable model. In general, the solution of OLS estimation of model with one independent variable is the same. The equations themselves are more complicated, but the basic concept of the calculating betas that minimize the number of squared residual remains unchanged. Since the research has more than one independent variable such as infrastructure, market size, exchange rate, and monetary policy, the data in this study were tested using the multivariate regression time series analysis technique. From the equation, we can say that FDI is treated as a dependent variable in the multiple regression model, while the other variables in the model are treated as the independent variables. If all conditions are satisfied, this model gives the best value for predicting the dependent variable based on the values of the independent variables. T-test. T-test is often used by the econometricians to test conclusion about individual regression slope coefficients. It is simple to apply since it allows for variations in component measuring unit as well as standard deviations of approximate coefficients. The statistic is the optimal metric to utilize when the stochastic error term is naturally distributed and the variance of the distribution must be computed. As you can see, the following are the hypotheses for the t-test. HO is to beta 1 equals to 0 and H1 is beta 1 is not equals to 0. F-test. F-test is a formal hypothesis test meant to address a null hypothesis including the numerous hypotheses or a single hypothesis concerning a set of coefficients. The most common use is to test the overall relevance of estimated equations. As there are 4 variables, the null alternate hypotheses are HO is to beta x1 is equals to beta x2 equals to beta x3 and equals to beta x4 equals to 0, while HO is not true. The coefficient of determination R squared. It is the simplest often used to fit, which is R squared. R squared is the ratio of the squares with the total squares. The higher the R squared is, the closer the computed equations fit the sample data. Such measures are called fitness goodness measures. R squared measures the percentage of Y to Y variance explained by the regression equation. R squared must be inside 0 or 1. A value of R squared around 1 implies a strong overall fit, whereas a value around 0 suggests a failure of the estimated regression equations to explain why is the values better than the sample mean Y could explain.
Production research analysis. This chapter will explain empirical results of all experiments that have been conducted and evaluated after numerous investigations on the data have been conducted to determine the relationship between independent and dependent variables. E-view software have been used. This research are regression, descriptive, and correlation analysis. Data from the World Bank for 10 years used in this research. Statistics for the data used in this analysis are shown in Table 2. For this research, there are a total of 10 observations. GDP have the greatest mean and median for the study with value of 130.9643 and 131.2287. Based on independent variable with the same unit. Exchange rate have the lower mean and median with value of 3.63255 and 3.58918. The biggest standard deviation for GDP is 6.165792 with the lowest standard deviation of exchange rate 0.51238. Furthermore, market size have the highest skewness 1.1239 to 1, while GDP have the lowest skewness negative 0.05041. And finally, the highest value courtesies is 1.851255, which is the monetary policy, while the lower value of courtesy is negative 2.239, which is the exchange rate.
Hypothesis testing. For the correlation analysis, the Pearson product moment indicated that the intercorrelation between all of our study variables was determined using the correlation, which are foreign direct investment, infrastructure, market size, exchange rate, and monetary policy. Correlation involves evaluating two aspects of the result, which is positive or negative correlation and the strength of correlation between the variables. For each variable, we choose at 5% significance level and two-sided test. So from the table shown that we can see from the result is infra has a weak and positive correlation of 0.310118 with FDI. The significance of the correlation is purely determined by the comparing the p-value of 0.3832 with the 5% level of significance. As a result, the p-value of 0.3832 is more than 0.05, and it indicates that infrastructure and FDI are insignificant, meaning when the infrastructure increases, the FDI will not be affected as it is insignificant with the FDI. And for the next, the variable GDP also has a weak and positive correlation with FDI of 0.285817. The correlation is not significant due to the p-value of 0.4234 higher than 0.05 level of significance. And furthermore, the EXR has a negative correlation of negative 0.396284 with the FDI. The correlation to the EXR is an insignificant p-value of 0.2569, which is more than 0.05 level of significance. And lastly, the MANSOP also had a weak correlation of 0.429684 with the FDI. The correlation for the MANSOP is a significant to p-value of 0.2152, which is more than 0.05 of level of significance. So next, the value of R squared is the significance of overall regression equation, which is on the result, the F statistic value is 0.2005, which is higher than the critical value of 5%. And the F statistic can be explained by the independent variables, which are infrastructure, market size, exchange rate, and monetary policy. F statistic value is higher than the significance level of 5%, and F statistic value is higher than the significance level of 5%. The null hypothesis cannot be rejected, is negative 0.43 none of the independent variables has a significant effect on the foreign direct investment, which is also a low as R squared value. This means that by using the variable on the result, only a few can be explained. So the first variable is the infrastructure as the coefficient is 0.2927. This means that every RM1 ringgit change in infrastructure will lead to a change by 0.2927 in FDI, assuming that all other variables remain constant. Since the value is positive, it indicates that there is a direct relationship between infrastructure and FDI. Any increases in infrastructure will decrease the inflow of FDI. The T value is negative 0.114777, which is greater than 5% of the critical value. This is not aligned with the probability of freedom, where the P value of the market size is 0.9131, which is higher than the 5% level of significance. Therefore, the null hypothesis cannot be rejected, in infrastructure will lead to a change by 0.2927 to the foreign direct investment in FDI. This assuming that all other variables remain constant. Since the value is positive, it indicates that there is a direct relationship between infrastructure and FDI. Any increases in infrastructure. And lastly, the coefficient of monetary policy is 0.2770459, which is indicating that every RM1 ringgit change in monetary policy will lead to a change by RM 0.27059 in FDI, assuming that all variables stay constant. Since the value is negative, it indicates that the value is positive, indicates that there is a direct relationship between the T value is negative 0.137673, which is smaller than 5% of the critical T value. This is not aligned with the probability value where the P value of the exchange rate is 0.8959, where the P value of the exchange rate is 0.5% level of significance, which is higher than the 5% level of cannot be rejected. Therefore, the exchange rate is statistically insignificant as the monetary policy is statistically insignificant with the finding from Fazida 2013. And lastly, she stated the coefficient of monetary policy is no statistically significant relation or effect on which is
Now I proceed with the t-test. From the table of t-test show that for independent variable, hypothesis 1, 2, 3 and 4 is not significant. From the result, all independent variable is above than 5% significant level. This means that there is no significant relationship between foreign direct investment with infrastructure, market size, exchange rate and monetary policy. Results from finding can be used to accept the new hypothesis HO and reject the alternative hypothesis HA.
Okay, infrastructure. According to the findings, infrastructure is not significant because the result of this variable is over the significant level, but still shows a good result. Market structure. From the result, infrastructure is insignificant at 0.9131 level, which is above than 5% significant level. In Malaysia, GDP per capita is not correlated of FDI inflow. Exchange rate. According to Akil and Nishat 2004, an increase in foreign direct investment may lead a rise in the host country currency rate. A depreciation in the currency rate, on the other hand, will result in a drop in FDI, foreign direct investment. Okay, lastly for me, monetary policy. Foreign investors, on the other hand, shun corruption since it is difficult to control as well as hazardous and costly. Hazard. Robert and Watson 2004 studied the impact of corruption on changes in levels of FDI from a strategic view. Okay, thank you. That is all from me today.
Conclusion, the findings show that all independent variables are not related to the determinants of foreign direct investment. As a result, the outcome does not match the findings of previous research. This was due to the proxy used to measure in different time series and independent variables was slightly inaccurate to investigate the determinants of FDI. For our recommendation, firstly, the sample size is a problem when running data. We strongly advise the next researchers who are interested in this research to increase the sample size as larger as possible. And secondly, is due to the limitation of e-views. Future researchers are recommended to use other tools such as a state or graph to run data and as a backup. For the limitation of the research, first is the lack of available data. The researchers are having difficulty collecting further data and the data has a cap that is affecting our study research project because it is not in accordance with our time frame. Secondly is the timing of study. Students frequently have a due date for submitting their work. However, as a researchers, we only have almost 4 months to complete the study. And lastly is access to literature. Most of the time, study begins with researchers identifying holes in the literature and attempting to fill them. However, whether a discrepancy exists is determined by the researcher's degree of access to the current literature. That's all from us. Thank you.